Hello and welcome to today's video. So on the centenary of the publication of the first book of the World Crisis, today we're going to have a look at the full set of the original Winston Churchill first editions, all 6 volumes, plus one of the later omnibus editions from the early 1940s. Absolutely fantastic set if you've never read it, and I think that the history behind each volume and how they came to be and what Churchill did with his royalties is quite fascinating. So that is what we're going to be having a look at today. So sit back, relax, and let's get to it. The World Crisis is Winston Churchill's account of the First World War, published in 6 volumes, or technically 5, as Volume 3 was published in 2 parts. Published between 1923 and 1931, in many respects it prefigures his better-known multiverse, the Second World War. The World Crisis is analytical and in some parts a justification by Churchill of his role in the war. Churchill is reputed to have said about this work that it was not history but a contribution to history. His American biographer, William Manchester, wrote, "His masterpiece is The World Crisis." Published over the period of several years, 1923 to 1931, a 6-volume, 3,261-page account of the Great War, beginning with its origins in 1911 and ending with its repercussions in the 1920s. Magnificently written, it is enhanced by the presence of the author at the highest councils of war and in the trenches as a battalion commander. The British historian Robert Rhodes James writes, "For all its pitfalls as history, the World Crisis must surely stand as Churchill's masterpiece. After it, anything must appear as anticlimax." The news that he was writing about the war was all over London, and he chose the Times for the serial rights rather than the magazine The Metropolitan. And with advances from his English and American publishers, he told a guest in 1921 that it was exhilarating to write for half a crown a word. That was £1 for every 8 words. The title was settled as The World Crisis rather than Sea Power and the World Crisis. Successive volumes were published from 1923 to 1931 by Thornton Butterworth in England and Charles Scribner's and Sons in America. The first American advances enabled him to purchase a new Rolls-Royce in August 1921. In 1922, he had purchased Chartwell, a large house requiring extensive and expensive repairs and rebuildings. Okay, so here's the very first volume then, and you'll notice that all the books have got the title embossed on the front there. So this is The World Crisis, and then 1911 to 1914, and also on the spines there, and they are uniform. So 1911 to 1914, Thornton Butterworth. So this first volume here, although it actually starts in 1911, when Churchill became the head of the Admiralty, the narrative actually commences in 1870 with the Franco-Prussian War and ends with Turkey and the Balkans. So that's sort of the period that's covered in this very first volume here. Here we are, first published April 1923. Started a couple of years before that, of course. And this one's got a little errata slip inside. As I said, if you've never read this book, or Churchill in general, you really, really should, because he writes it so very well. So here is book number 2, volume 2. It's just 1915. That's the entire year that's covered in this one. It's described as the year of ill fortune to the cause of the Allies, starting with the deadlock in the West, mention of tanks and smoke, and ending with the Dardanelles campaign, which was, of course, Gallipoli. Churchill complains in his preface that upon me alone among the high authorities concerned with the Dardanelles was the penalty inflicted, not of loss of office, for that is a petty thing, but of interruption, deprivation of control, or the fate of the enterprise was still in suspense. This one is published October 1923. And there is his preface where we just quoted. There's the contents there. This one's got some fold-out maps inside. So that's one there, the Turkish theatre, and you do find these throughout the series. General map of the theatre of war there. And it's the sort of thing to look out for if you are looking to buy a set or any of these volumes. As I said, not the best of condition copies, that one, but it's a copy all the same of volume 2 for 1915. Now, volume 3 is published in 2 volumes, else it would have been too big, I guess. So numerically, they're numbers 3 and 4. So you'll notice on the spine, so it's got 3 stars. Volume 2 over here had the 2 stars. This is 3, and this one is 4 stars. And these were published in 1927 in the 2 parts, and these look at the years 1916 to 1918. And this volume starts with the Allied High Command at the beginning of 1916 and the combatants evenly matched for the prolonged struggle. Part 2 of Volume 3 starts with the invitation of the Prime Minister, Lloyd George, to rejoin the government on the 16th of July 1917 as either the Minister of Munitions, which is the one that he chose, or the newly created Air Ministry. This volume was originally published in the 2 parts. In subsequent editions, these were labelled as volumes 3 and 4. So the original structure of 5 volumes of 6 physical books became 6 volumes. So here we are. So it clearly says part 1 there, doesn't it? Now these are in much better condition. The first published 1927. Nice introduction by Churchill from Chartwell on January the 1st here. Now, this pair in particular are very nice because they have, from the publisher Thornton Butterworth, it's a little promotional. So these were advanced review copies. So Messrs. Thornton Butterworth Limited have the pleasure to enclose a copy of The World Crisis, 1916 to 18, by Winston Churchill for the favour of review. A copy of the issue containing the notice would be much appreciated. The published price is 42 shillings net, and the publishing day is the 3rd of March 1927, before which it is earnestly requested that your review will not appear. So it's putting a little embargo date on it. How nice is that? That's really, really nice. So these were a review pair, and these came together. So these would have been sent direct from the publishers to a newspaper or someone who requested a review copy. Very, very nice they are as well. Here's volume 4. Volume 3, part 2, I should say. Little list of Churchill's books up to this point. The World Crisis and some of his other ones there. African Journey, biography of Lord Randolph Churchill. London to Ladysmith via Pretoria. That's one I actually have got. Story of the Malacan Field Force. Although Churchill is very, very expensive to collect these days in first edition, if you're patient, the books do turn up. I just count myself lucky that I got so many when I did, many years ago, decades ago now. As I said, they were all issued with original dust wrappers, but the wrappers are very, very plain, very like text block. And I don't think the books are so lovely without the dust wrappers. I honestly don't think they, I miss not having them on there, only in so much as maybe they give them a little extra bit of protection. So this is volume 4, but it's actually book number 5 in the series, and this is Aftermath, The Aftermath. This is the years 1918 to 1922, and this one was published by Thornton Butterworth in 1929. So this one's quite nice. It's got a little period review of the series in, as I recall. Yeah, here we are. And this is actually tying in with some of the last volume, Aftermath. Battle of Jutland. Aftermath again, Mr. Churchill's brilliant book. So a few little period reviews just slipped into the front of this one here, which is quite nice. Don't mind that at all. So yeah, the preface says it was mainly concerned with the reactions outside of the peace conference in the halls of Paris and Versailles. Though there are chapters on the conference, the League of Nations and the peace treaties, Churchill indicates that the Treaty of Versailles is being a bit too harsh and predicts that it will cause future problems. Well, he was dead right there, wasn't he? This one, as you can see, published March 1929. It says, this volume completes the task I undertook nearly 10 years ago of making a contemporary contribution to the history of the Great War. So the thing was, this was designed to be the very final book in the series, and that was it. He was drawing a line under it, but he did in the end have to bow to public demand and do one final volume looking at the Eastern Front, and that's the very last volume in the series there. So the last volume is volume 6, but it's actually volume 5. It's just the 6th book in the series, and this is the one looking at the Eastern Front. So this last volume, according to the preface, tells of the conflict between Russia and the two Teutonic empires and the agonies of Central Europe arising in Vienna. The struggle starts with Bosnia, the murder of the Archduke and the House of Habsburg, and the ends of the ruin of all three houses. After the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917, Russia withdraws from the war. So basically, the story wasn't quite finished, and Churchill was asked to just do the Russian point of view, which is exactly what he does. And that finishes the series properly. Then there's numerous maps in this one, and a few photographs. They did not spare any expense in this. And at the very end, there is a huge colour fold-out map, which I would make sure if you are looking to purchase a copy of this, I'd make sure that yours does indeed include this map of the Eastern Front, which I would imagine would be quite easy to lose. And that finishes the original series of 6. Now, there was one other part of the series, and that was the one volume edition, which was published by Macmillan. Now, this one came out in 1943. It's a really nice, hefty tome, and Churchill was PM again, and in 1941, so very start, early years of the war, and I guess the market was there, since we're in the middle of the Second World War, the market was there to go back and see what Churchill had actually written. So this is a abridged and revised edition. And it's got an additional chapter on the Battle of the Marne, which Churchill must have added in. So if we have a look on the printing history there, first published February 31, transferred to Macmillan 1941. And this perhaps is a really easy way for you to read the best of the world crisis, as it were. This copy here, in its dust wrapper, admittedly I've been looking for them for a while, only cost me £10, which I think is an absolute steal. I think, generally speaking, though, it goes for a bit more than that. I think it is more a £30 sort of hardback. But when you think the original volumes of the World Crisis to buy now are £20 a pop from Bloomsbury, you might find this is actually better value, and you've got a really nice sort of hardback for your bookcase there. Some of his other books that were in publish at the time, which Macmillan did. They did reprints of his earlier books there. But overall, a truly, truly fantastic set. If you want to read the books today, they are still in print from Bloomsbury, but each volume is about £20 a pop. Second hand, you can get the abridged 2-volume set, which was published by Oddham's. It's a nice period hardback set for no more than £40. I actually picked a set of those up for a £5 fairly recently. First editions of the first 5 books, though, do sell even without a dust wrapper for about £100 a pop. And the very last part 6, is definitely the scarcest, and that one sells for about £250 on its own, once again without a dust wrapper. You can sometimes pick up full sets for about £800. Any that do have the wrappers, which are pretty boring to be honest, but they do exist out there, it's considerably more. There is a set on eBay at the moment, admittedly with volume 3 signed by Churchill, which is for sale complete with wrappers for $25,000. The much cheaper one volume edition there you see on the end by Macmillan, that one just cost me a tenner, which wasn't bad at all, I thought. And that's the abridged and updated version. And it might be the easiest way if you just wanted sort of a taste of the series. So there you go. Hope you've enjoyed that little look through Churchill's The World Crisis in First Edition. Certainly an amazing, amazing series. Now, I do also have Churchill's History of the Second World War, which I find equally as fascinating, and the story about how that came to be. Well, it's a multi-part video in itself, to be honest. It's just amazing. But if this one goes down all right, and if you fancy hearing the story of Churchill's Second World War, do leave a comment down below and I'll arrange to get that one filmed shortly. If you have enjoyed today's video, do please give it a thumbs up. Do please consider subscribing for regular vintage, paperback and book content. There's lots already on the channel and there's lots more still to come. And I shall look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye.